What if some of the greatest war films of the 1970s never got the recognition they deserved? Beneath the famous blockbusters, there were raw, ambitious productions that captured the chaos of battle and the loneliness of survival better than anyone remembers. These were not patriotic posters brought to life, they were confessions on celluloid. And if you think you've seen it all, wait until you hear about the ones history quietly buried. Number 15. Escape to Athena, 1979. A World War II adventure that somehow mixes espionage comedy and Greek island chaos and still works. Directed by George P. Cosmatos, Escape to Athena stars Roger Moore as a smooth but morally gray officer running a prisoner camp on a sun-drenched Greek island. His captives? A group of Allied soldiers plotting the most bizarre heist of the decade, stealing priceless art from their occupiers. The production feels like someone handed the director a history book and a treasure map at the same time. Filmed entirely on location in Rhodes, it combines Mediterranean beauty with explosions big enough to rattle the harbor. Behind the camera, producers fought studio nerves about its tone, part war, part caper, part satire. Yet somehow, it captures the strange absurdity of wartime greed. Critics at the time were confused. Was it an action movie, a parody, a morality play with tan lines? Roger Moore later joked that audiences didn't know whether to salute or laugh. Still, decades later, its offbeat energy feels refreshing, a reminder that war films didn't always need mud and misery to make their point. Under the bright Greek sun, Escape to Athena proves chaos can wear a smile and still bite hard. Number 14. Attack on the Iron Coast, 1970. If you've ever wondered what the British equivalent of The Dirty Dozen looked like, Attack on the Iron Coast is your answer, but leaner, meaner, and a lot more tragic. Directed by Paul Wenkos, it stars Lloyd Bridges as a determined naval officer who plans a daring raid on a heavily fortified harbor. His mission? Ram an explosives-laden ship straight into an enemy dockyard, knowing full well he might not make it back. Filmed partly in Wales and on real Royal Navy vessels, the production aimed for documentary realism. Wenkos avoided Hollywood gloss and instead focused on tension, crews sweating under pressure, steel groaning under fire, and men realizing bravery doesn't always mean victory. Bridges anchors the film, with stoic intensity portraying leadership as both burden and curse. The movie's action scenes were staged with practical effects long before modern filmmaking shortcuts. The climactic harbor sequence was shot using full-size ships and miniature detonations, blended seamlessly, a technical triumph for its time. Critics praised its authenticity, but overlooked it amid flashier releases that same year. Today, Attack on the Iron Coast feels like the blueprint for every sacrificial hero mission that came later. It's a film about commitment taken to its ultimate end, where courage collides with futility and history quietly forgets the men who made both possible. Number 13. Soldier of Orange, 1977. Before Paul Verhoeven became known for futuristic thrillers, he made Soldier of Orange a breathtaking World War II epic about friendship, betrayal, and resistance in Nazi-occupied Holland. Based on true events, it follows a group of wealthy Dutch students whose lives diverge sharply as the war turns their ideals upside down. Some join the resistance, others collaborate, and one ends up trapped between both. Verhoeven shot the film across the Netherlands and England with unprecedented authenticity for a Dutch production. The bombing scenes used actual military aircraft, and the tension between the characters mirrors real social fractures of the time. Star Rutger Hauer's breakout performance made him an international name, blending charm with quiet tragedy. What makes Soldier of Orange unforgettable is its scope. It's not about one battle, it's about an entire generation cracking under pressure. Critics in Europe hailed it as a masterpiece, though American audiences barely noticed its release. Over time, historians came to recognize it as one of the finest resistance dramas ever made, praised for showing how loyalty can dissolve when survival takes over. If you only know Verhoeven from his later Hollywood work, this film is his emotional anchor, a story that proves courage is often messier than we'd like to believe. Number 12. The Human Factor, 1975. In an age of loud war spectacles, The Human Factor dared to go quiet. Directed by Edward Dmytryk, it's a Cold War-era espionage drama that swaps firefights for whispered conversations and moral unease. George Kennedy plays a security officer investigating a mysterious leak inside a top-secret defense organization. But what he uncovers is not treachery from an enemy, but corruption within his own ranks. Shot with documentary precision, the film captures the tension of men who've spent too long living in the shadow of global conflict. Dmytryk himself, once blacklisted in Hollywood, approached the story with personal bitterness. He filled it with small details, stale offices, sleepless nights, and the haunting silence of doubt. Critics dismissed it as too slow when it premiered, but over time it's gained respect for what it really is: a study of conscience in uniform. Kennedy's restrained performance anchors the film, showing a man realizing that loyalty can be its own trap. While it never made much money, the human factor influenced later political thrillers by proving you don't need explosions to create pressure. You just need truth closing in. Number 11. Massacre in Rome, 1973. Based on one of the most chilling true stories of the Second World War, Massacre in Rome refuses to sugarcoat. Directed by George P. Cosmatos, it recounts the Ardeatine Caves, reprisal when German forces executed hundreds of civilians after a resistance attack in occupied Italy. Richard Burton stars as the German officer carrying out orders he doesn't believe in, while Marcello Mastroianni plays a priest caught between faith and fury. What makes this film devastating isn't the violence, it's the bureaucracy behind it. Cosmatos treats the tragedy like a slow-moving machine, showing how obedience can be deadlier than malice. The production faced heavy censorship across Europe, especially in Germany, where some networks refused to broadcast it for decades. Critics admired Burton's restrained performance, describing it as one of his most haunting. The film's authenticity came from consulting actual survivors of the event, making its quiet moments hit harder than any explosion. Though largely forgotten today, Massacre in Rome remains a powerful study of moral paralysis. It asks a question few films dare. What happens when doing your duty means destroying your soul? Number 10. The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. A German commando team sneaks into England to kidnap Winston Churchill. That's the setup, and it's absolutely wild. The Eagle Has Landed, directed by John Sturges, turns that impossible mission into a tense and strangely human thriller. Michael Caine plays Colonel Steiner, a soldier bound by duty rather than ideology, and Donald Sutherland steals scenes as an Irish rebel working with the Germans. What makes this film so gripping is its balance between suspense and character. The operation unfolds like a chess match, full of near misses, divided loyalties, and quiet respect between enemies. Sturges shot large portions in rural England, transforming peaceful countryside into a trap waiting to snap. Production was notoriously tense. Caine refused to play the role as a cartoon villain, insisting that his character remain dignified and conflicted. That decision paid off. Critics later praised his nuanced performance as one of his best. Though based on a fictional novel, The Eagle Has Landed feels eerily plausible thanks to its military precision and understated direction. It became a sleeper hit, earning strong international box office and inspiring countless what-if military thrillers afterward. Decades later, it still stands as a rare film that lets the enemy feel human without rewriting history. Number 9. The Last Valley, 1971. Imagine the brutality of the 30 Years' War set against the quiet beauty of an untouched valley. That's The Last Valley, a film that feels more like a painting than a production. Directed by James Clavell and starring Michael Caine and Omar Sharif, it tells the story of a mercenary captain who discovers a peaceful village untouched by war and must decide whether to protect it or exploit it. Filmed high in the Austrian Alps, the production endured brutal weather and near-fatal avalanches. Clavell used natural light to emphasize isolation, and composer John Barry's haunting score gives every frame a tragic stillness. What makes the film unforgettable is its theme: peace as a temporary illusion. Caine's character begins as a hardened survivor, but slowly unravels as greed, faith, and human fear infect the valley's fragile calm. Critics were divided when it released too bleak for mainstream audiences, but modern viewers see it for what it is: an allegory about the futility of conquest. Few films have captured the moral exhaustion of endless war so elegantly. The Last Valley asks a timeless question: what would you sacrifice for peace, and what if the answer is everything? Number 8. Murphy's War, 1971. Peter O'Toole versus a stranded submarine crew. It sounds simple, but Murphy's War turns that premise into pure obsession. Directed by Peter Yates, the story follows Murphy, the sole survivor of a ship attack, who refuses to move on until he brings those responsible to justice. Shot entirely in Venezuela's Orinoco Delta, the film's setting is almost another character. The swampy, endless landscape mirrors Murphy's own descent into fixation. O'Toole, known for his grandeur, delivers one of his most human performances, a man caught between grief and madness. The film's practical stunts were legendary. O'Toole insisted on doing his own flying scenes in an antique seaplane, which led to multiple near accidents. Yates captured everything with documentary-like realism, often shooting with handheld cameras to give each moment raw immediacy. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it. Was it an adventure, a tragedy, a warning about vengeance? In truth, it was all three. Today, Murphy's War feels like an early meditation on trauma and obsession long before such themes were common in cinema. Its message endures. When war ends, it rarely ends inside the survivors. Number 7. The Light at the Edge of the World, 1971. Long before modern survival thrillers, there was The Light at the Edge of the World, a storm-tossed odyssey of isolation, courage, and revenge. Based on a Jules Verne story, it stars Kirk Douglas as a lonely lighthouse keeper whose post is attacked by ruthless raiders seeking control of a vital sea route. The film's production was as dangerous as its plot. Shot off the coast of Spain, Douglas performed most of his own stunts amid real waves, slippery rocks, and wind strong enough to knock over cameras. The cinematography is stunning, crashing seas, flickering flames, and faces lit only by lightning. Director Kevin Billington created an atmosphere both claustrophobic and epic. Despite being set mostly on a single rock, it feels like an entire world collapsing. Critics admired its visual power, but were divided on its tone. Some saw an action spectacle. Others, a psychological study of endurance. Though it struggled at the box office, the film later gained a cult, following for its raw survival energy and haunting atmosphere. In many ways, it foreshadowed the lonely man epics of the 1980s. The Light at the Edge of the World is a testament to human stubbornness, the refusal to surrender even when there's nothing left to save. Number 6. Kelly's Heroes, 1970. War comedy and a gold heist. Somehow it works. Kelly's Heroes, directed by Brian G. Hutton, stars Clint Eastwood as a cynical soldier who learns about a stash of enemy gold behind enemy lines and decides to liberate it with the help of an eccentric tank commander played by Donald Sutherland. Filmed in Yugoslavia, the production brought real tanks, massive sets, and more than 500 extras to recreate late-war Europe with surprising authenticity. But beneath its humor lies sharp commentary. These soldiers aren't chasing medals, they're chasing something far more honest, a payday. The film's anarchic spirit resonated with post-Vietnam audiences who were tired of clean-cut heroics. Critics didn't know whether to laugh or salute, but over time, Kelly's Heroes found its place as one of the decade's smartest war satires. Even its soundtrack featuring burning bridges became iconic. Behind the scenes, Eastwood reportedly rewrote several lines to make his character more grounded, while Sutherland improvised much of his dialogue, shaping Oddball into one of war cinema's most memorable eccentrics. Kelly's Heroes remains proof that chaos, greed, and humor can coexist without losing truth. It might look like a caper, but underneath the laughs is a blunt message. Sometimes the smartest soldier is the one who stops pretending war makes sense. Number 5. The Battle of Neretva, 1970. You want scale? The Battle of Neretva had it, and then some. Funded by Yugoslavia's government and directed by Veljko Bulajic, this massive production recreated the legendary World War II battle where partisan forces outnumbered and surrounded turned defeat into survival. With over 10,000 extras, tanks, planes, and an actual bridge destroyed on camera, it became one of the largest war films ever made outside Hollywood. The film's cast reads like an international summit. Yul Brynner, Orson Welles, Hardy Kruger, and Franco Nero all appear. Pablo Picasso even designed the movie's poster. Every frame feels like a national monument captured on film, and in a way it was. The Yugoslav government allowed unrestricted access to real battlefields and military hardware, transforming history into spectacle. But beneath the explosions lies something deeper, a reflection on unity amid chaos. The film celebrates ordinary soldiers who fought for survival rather than ideology. Its production nearly bankrupted the studio, and the English-language version was cut heavily for Western audiences, burying much of its emotional depth. Still, historians now rank it among the most ambitious war epics ever shot, calling it Europe's answer to the longest day. The Battle of Neretva isn't just forgotten, it's colossal proof that sometimes patriotism can be painted with both mud and poetry. Number 4, Play Dirty, 1970. Forget clean heroics, Play Dirty lives up to its title. Directed by André de Toth, this grim World War II desert adventure stars Michael Caine as an oil engineer reluctantly sent on a sabotage mission behind enemy lines with a crew of convicts and misfits. It sounds like the Dirty Dozen in the desert, but it's far colder, drier, and deadlier. Filmed in the blistering sands of Algeria, the production pushed everyone to their limits. Temperatures soared past 100 degrees. Vehicles broke down mid-shoot, and several crew members suffered heat exhaustion. Caine later described it as one of the toughest shoots of his career, and it shows. What makes Play Dirty remarkable is its honesty. The soldiers here don't talk about honor or sacrifice. They steal water, lie, cheat, and argue their way through survival. There are no speeches, no trumpets, just grit and sand. De Toth's direction is sharp and cynical, stripping away glamour until all that's left is instinct. Critics dismissed it as too bleak, but modern viewers recognize its brilliance. Play Dirty doesn't glorify anything, it just shows what happens when decency erodes one decision at a time. It's not a war movie that makes you proud, it's one that makes you think. Number 3. The Bridge at Remagen, 1970. In a decade full of experimental war dramas, The Bridge at Remagen stood out for one reason: it actually got shut down by a real invasion. Shot in Czechoslovakia, the production halted abruptly when Soviet troops invaded the country during filming. The cast and crew barely escaped with their lives, taking the unfinished footage to West Germany to complete it. Directed by John Guillermin, the film tells the story of the final days of the war, as both Allied and German forces raced to control the last bridge across the Rhine. George Siegel and Robert Vaughn lead a cast of tired, desperate soldiers fighting less for victory than for survival. The movie's authenticity is haunting. Instead of polished uniforms and grand speeches, we see confusion, exhaustion, and moral decay. Guillermin used handheld cameras, long takes, and real explosions that often startled his actors for genuine reactions. Critics praised its realism, but didn't know what to make of its tone, neither patriotic nor bitter, just honest. Over time, it became a quiet favorite among historians who admired its accuracy and its eerie production backstory. The Bridge at Remagen captures the moment when war stopped being glorious and started looking like a mistake that no one could stop. Number 2. The Battle of Britain, 70s reissue cut. When the Battle of Britain returned to theaters in the early 70s with an extended cut, audiences finally saw what the filmmakers originally intended: a technical marvel that still stands as one of the most authentic air combat films ever made. Directed by Guy Hamilton and featuring an all-star cast led by Michael Caine, Laurence Olivier, and Christopher Plummer, it recreated the legendary 1940 air campaign with breathtaking precision. The reissue featured previously cut footage and enhanced sound design, using real recordings of vintage aircraft. Every aerial scene used actual planes, no models, no visual effects. Pilots from the Royal Air Force flew restored Spitfires and Messerschmitts for real, often within feet of each other. The film also dared to show both sides with balance. German officers are portrayed as disciplined professionals, not caricatures, and the British pilots are shown as fallible, scared, and exhausted. Critics revisiting the new version called it the definitive air war film. It's easy to forget how ambitious this was, filming a dogfight with real planes in formation, all without CGI. Decades later, even modern directors still study its choreography. The Battle of Britain reissue isn't just a re-release, it's a second chance for one of the most visually authentic war films ever made. Number 1. The Man Who Never Was, 1976 television remake. The 1970s television remake of The Man Who Never Was took a familiar wartime deception story and gave it new emotional weight. Based on the true Operation Mincemeat, it tells how British intelligence planted false papers on a corpse to mislead enemy forces about an Allied invasion. This version, directed by Delbert Mann, focused less on the strategy and more on the people behind the deception, the officers who had to live with the consequences of their plan. Laurence Olivier, in one of his most quietly powerful television roles, plays the intelligence chief haunted by the moral price of manipulation. Filmed with modest resources but meticulous detail, the production recreated wartime London interiors and naval offices with striking authenticity. The tension isn't built through explosions, but through the weight of choices, each scene humming with quiet dread and responsibility. While it aired as a made-for-television feature, critics called it a masterclass in restraint and tension. Historians later praised its accuracy, noting that it depicted the real logistics of the operation better than the earlier film. Forgotten by most audiences, this version deserves rediscovery for what it is. A haunting reminder that intelligence work can be as cold and costly as combat. These films prove that the 1970s were not just about style, they were about substance. In an era before digital shortcuts, every explosion, argument, and stare meant something real. They showed war not as a game of winners, but as a mirror reflecting who we become when rules disappear. So, which of these forgotten battles should make a comeback? Drop your pick in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for the next deep dive into lost cinematic history.